All right, welcome to another episode of The Immigrant Gun Owner. My name is Matthias. I'm the German with a gun. Today, I think we have a lot to talk about. There's a couple of things that happened since the last episode, and I'm very excited about my guest today. My guest is somebody I've recently met, and we pretty much hit it off right away. We connected over a lot of different things. Let me recap. First of all, the intro. This is episode number 6, I believe. I've said it 5 times already. I'll repeat it for a few more times. The purpose of the show, The Immigrant Gun Owner, is to appeal mostly to other immigrants. I myself am from Germany, obviously, the German with a gun. I've been in America now 16 years and got into the gun community. Well, I should say I became a gun owner pretty early, but I got into the gun community, I want to say, really in the last 5 years or so. And I have noticed as a firearms instructor, as a range safety officer, Lucky, come here. Lucky is here with me as always, bothering other people in studio. And so I've noticed as a firearms instructor and a range safety officer, there are a lot of immigrants and people of color from all walks of life in the gun community. But I have noticed that a lot of them go to the gun range, they practice, and then they go home. They don't participate in activism. They don't go to, by and large, they don't go to town hall meetings. They don't go to events. They don't do a lot of those things. But they're out there. The gun community is very diverse. And I'd like to meet immigrants in the gun community. I'd like to find out about their origin stories, how, when, where, and why they chose to become gun owners. Because for us, gun ownership is not part of culture. As we in Germany and in many other countries, we do not have gun culture. There are some countries, and we'll get into that later with my guest, who had a gun culture at one point. But we all did not, for the most part, did not grow up with this shooting in the backyard with our grandparents or parents. And so for most of the immigrants that I come across, it was a conscious choice to want to or have to become a gun owner at some point. And therefore, our journey in the gun community is quite different from most people who are American born. And those are the people I want to talk to and appeal to and encourage to be more open about gun ownership and gun rights and get involved in the gun community. And with that, let me talk a little bit about my guest today. My guest is somebody I met at GRPC in Salt Lake City last month. Actually, it's December, so 2 months ago by now. And Kate is interesting because her origin story is somewhat different from a lot of the people that I've talked to before, because us immigrants, we come to America for work, for economic opportunity, for religious freedoms, for all sorts of things, just not for guns. That's something that happens a lot later for most people. However, Kate is the exception. And Kate came to America from Australia because we have a lot of gun freedoms that Australia at one point used to have, but no longer does. And I'll let her explain the rest of her story herself. Welcome, Kate, also known as Lady Liberty Australia. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for having me on your show. I think I'm your number one fan. I've watched every episode. I really appreciate you doing this, Matthias, because as an immigrant to America, it's been so interesting learning the stories of people from all different walks of life who have moved here and embraced the Second Amendment. And yes, I'm one of the rare people who moved here because of the Second Amendment and the First Amendment. And we did used to have that culture you were talking about back in Australia before 1996. I'm old enough to remember those days. And I'm old enough to remember the incident in Tassie, Port Arthur, which is where all of our gun laws and our gun culture changed forever. That's when the Australian government used a tragedy that happened down in Tassie by a known mentally unwell man who was known to be a threat to the community and had firearms, a story that we've heard 1,000 times before. That tragedy where 35 people were murdered that day was used to change our gun culture and gun laws forever. And I witnessed my father being treated like a criminal by the government and by the media for being a sporting shooter and hunter. So my culture is hunting and shooting. That is something I grew up in the outback of South Australia, hunting on my grandmother's farm with my dad. And that has been destroyed throughout the years. And that's why I had to make the decision, the very difficult decision, to leave my home country, despite the fact I'm a daughter of immigrants myself who moved from fascist Italy to Australia for freedom, and to see the liberties that we used to share with America. We don't have them anymore. So I'm so blessed and so grateful every day to wake up in America where we have the Second Amendment and we have people like you and all the other Second Amendment advocates fighting to keep our rights.
Kate, you have so you have a background in hunting and in shooting, and then in 1996, that mass shooting happened, which has happened in other countries as well, and a lot of countries have gone the same path that Australia has. England, for example, or the United Kingdom has a similar story. Here in America, we've had events like that as well, but we have done a relatively decent job at going the other direction. So, in my experience, when a tragedy like that happens, let's say it's a school shooting or some other large shooting event, a criminal shooting event, there are typically two reactions. One side will call for more gun control and gun bans and stricter laws and more regulation. And the other side will call for more gun freedoms to allow people, teachers, to carry at school, to allow, or rather to get rid of gun-free zones. Both of those people probably have good intentions, but things like that should not be judged by their intent, but by their outcome. And gun regulation, arguably, that's our position, makes people less safe, and we want to be safer, right? And Australia was one of those places where it went towards gun regulation. In America, so far, we've done a pretty good job at maintaining our gun freedoms. And you specifically chose Texas as your state of residence because Texas is a relatively gun-friendly state, right? It has a lot of gun freedoms.
It is, and just important to note, it was the Conservative government in Australia that brought in these toughest gun laws in the world after 1996 in partisanship with the left side of politics. But so we don't really have a Conservative Party in Australia. There's no one who you can vote for who is pro Second Amendment or even pro free speech. So that's another thing that I appreciate about America, is you actually have a Conservative Party, and I know the Libertarians are trying to do some things too. But in Australia, we can't vote our way out of this because both sides, both major parties, are anti-gun. That is the position that we are in Australia, and we do not have the First Amendment for free speech. So I've been cancelled, censored, defamed, all sorts of things has happened to me as an individual who actually ran for office on a gun rights platform after I saw what was happening in my home state of Western Australia. That's where I set up home, in that big, beautiful country in Perth.
Yeah,
so
I was
I
going
just
to
wanted
ask you about
people
that.
to understand that we don't have a side fighting for us like we do here.
I was going to ask you about that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think both the liberals and the conservatives are not in favor of gun freedom?
I think it's easier to control the population if you disarm them. And I'm a big history fan, and I spoke a lot to my nonno who came over from Italy about what happened to get to that point in Italy. And of course, you're from Germany, so you know this story as well. And so when you disarm people, you saw what happened during the pandemic. The border was closed for 2.5 years. I couldn't leave my state in Western Australia to travel for 2.5 years. And we had no right to free speech, no right to protest. They were quickly shut down very quickly as well. So it breaks my heart because a lot of Americans love Australia and Steve Irwin and our culture and our humour. And our country is not like that anymore. I would say it died in 1996. And then the final nail in the coffin was when Steve Irwin died in 2006. My country is on its way to being Argentina, especially economically as well. We have a housing crisis. We do have high immigration too as well. So I'm a bit upset today thinking about what's happened to my home country, but here in Texas, it's completely different. It feels like it is Australia 30 years ago, the culture, the people, the freedoms that we have. And I've never felt safer either. I get a lot of Australians say, aren't you scared living in Texas? You know, school shooting people. I feel safer because I have the responsibility to defend myself and the right to defend myself with any means necessary, which we also don't have back home.
Yeah, the fact that you don't have gun rights anymore is one thing, but the self-defense laws are also not so great over there, huh?
No, not at all. We can't even use pepper spray or mace to defend ourselves. We can't use lethal or non-lethal means. There is laws about equal force. So if you break into my house with a cricket bat, I can pick up a cricket bat. But obviously that's not really fair in the real world. Your swing would be better than mine, maybe.
Well, you know,
But
if I was in the same situation, I'd be screwed because I don't have a cricket bat.
baseball bat then.
Um, but so you brought up the fact that you ran for office, and you know, I'd like to pretend I know everything about Australian politics. I know your 7 states, but give us a quick 30,000-foot view how the government in Australia works. It's relatively similar to America, isn't it?
Yes, well, we have a federal government, or national government, and then the states and 2 territories we have their own state parliaments. So they have governments too. It's also important to note that the federal government does not regulate firearms. They only control import and export laws. So it's the states and territories who have, we call them residual powers in our constitution, to regulate and legislate firearm controls. But in 1996, the federal government pushed from the top down onto the states and territories. This is how we have to have it. This is our National Firearms Agreement, not National Firearms Act like they have here. So this was all, we'll give you this money if you bring in these laws, that kind of wheeling and dealing that governments love to do to pressure other governments to do what the federal government wants them to do. But in our constitution, we do not have individual rights recognised at all. It's all about how much powers the state governments, territories, federal government, and the judiciary have. There is an implied right to freedom of political communication and expression, but of course, I gave you the example on my show the other day. That has already been challenged in the High Court with Candace Owens' visa case, and she was denied entry. So there is no free speech in Australia anymore. That doesn't exist. So I actually ran for the Senate, which would be in the federal parliament. This was at the 2022 federal election. So we were still going through that dark times of the early 2020s. The border of my state was still closed. It closed in March 2020 and didn't open until July 2022. So quite a long time to not have freedom of movement between states and territories, which is actually written in the Constitution, by the way. We have a right to travel freely between the states and territories, but not in a declared emergency. And there was a state of emergency declared. I think it was 963 days in my state.
Loophole,
so we didn't have that right. So I ran for the Senate, and I ran on a gun rights campaign because Western Australia has now introduced the toughest, most restrictive, most tyrannical laws that I have ever seen. And I've spent 5 years of my life working for the Sporting Shooters Association of Australia, which is like your NRA. And I was on the ground in WA. I went to some of the illegal protests, particularly about the closed border and some of the mandates they were putting on the people. You needed to show your vaccine passport to buy alcohol at one stage. It was very... Yeah. I've got some horror stories from the 2020s,
alcohol.
let me tell you. For alcohol, yes. And that was a bit of a deliberate thing because a lot of the Indigenous Australians were not lining up. They didn't trust the white man with the needle, and who can blame them after our history?
Yeah.
And so as a way to try and get them to line up for this thing, they said you needed to show proof of vaccination to buy alcohol. This is how evil the government was in that state. So I quit my job. I was in a very well-paying, safe job. And I just thought I need to do something. I had the support of the Liberal Democrats was the party. It is now the Libertarian Party, but the Liberal Democrats is the only party that we've ever had a senator elected. That was former Senator David Leyonhjelm. I compare him to the Ron Paul of Australia. So that's his kind of character. And because I worked for him for 2 years prior to moving to Perth, I felt that he mentored me. I had the support of my party. I can speak, I think, and obviously my background being a lobbyist for the SSAA, I just felt it was my duty to stand up and try and fight for my people. I nearly got elected, but we have bloody preference deals in Australia, so preferential voting.
Explain how that
so
works. I don't know how that works.
So you also have compulsory voting. So everybody has to vote, even if you want to draw an interesting picture on your ballot, which a lot of people like to do. You have to go in, you have to number your preferred candidate or party 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 12, however many is on the ballot. And then because it's preferential, people get knocked out. And if you get knocked out, your preferences go to who the party has done a deal with to get those preferences. So your vote doesn't expire. It's always shuffled around. And the candidate who beat me, I think she didn't even click over 1,000 votes. And I got nearly 30,000 votes. And she was elected instead of me because of this preference system. So democracy in its finest.
Interesting. I'm not sure I quite understand that, but that is a weird system.
Well, it's a system that's designed to keep the minor parties out. We do have quite a few. The other thing is there are other options than red or blue, but because of our voting system, it's very difficult to get elected because a lot of the preferences end up flowing to the major parties anyway. It's all rigged. I don't believe in voting anymore. And that's another thing I love about America is I don't have to vote if I don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, an abstention is a vote too, right? If you don't show up and you abstain, that's a vote. But
well, that'll get you a fine in the mail back home.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that. Chile has a similar system, I think. I know somebody from there. You have to vote there too. Germany's voting system, I feel like, is somewhat similar to Australia because in Germany you actually get 2 votes. You vote 1 for the candidate and 2 for the party.
That's like New Zealand, yeah.
Yeah, and so they do some weird math, if the party gets more votes than, or I've been gone for so long, I used to know how that works, but it has something to do with how the seats in parliament are assigned. If your candidate doesn't get enough votes, but the party has more votes proportional to the number of seats, whatever, then the candidate still gets in. It's a weird system. I've been gone for too long. I don't remember exactly how that goes.
Whoever wins, we all lose. That's how I feel about it.
But yeah, that's a bummer. You did pretty well for your Senate race. So
that's
now in
America,
you are so far not eligible to vote, right? You're here on a visa. You don't have a green card. Although I think with a green card still you can't vote. You have to be a citizen. But maybe one day, huh? Are you fully intend to stay here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't see myself returning to Australia in the next 5 years. I'm actually very interested to see what it will be like when I return home for Christmas and New Year's. I was traveling around the United States last year for 3 months. I did a big driving tour across your beautiful country. I went to Pork Fest, Freedom Fest, all these events, the Libertarian National Convention in Washington, D.C., where I got to see President Donald Trump speak. RFK Jr. was there. So I'm very interested in American politics. But it would be interesting to see just how more expensive Australia's gotten, and the culture change is something that I noticed a lot when I was living there. It's not this Aussie larrikin, have a go, she'll be right, mate, anymore. It's completely changed. There is a lot of, and we saw that during the pandemic, like dobbing in your mate and snitching on people. And It's just become such a dog eat dog culture that I don't have a lot of respect for a lot of the oligarchs who've ruined. It's
Yeah.
a paradise run by parasites would be my best description of my home country.
Europe is on a similar path. It's not too far off from what Europe is doing. Some countries more, some countries less, but I see a lot of similarities.
Well,
Um,
America is the last beacon of hope, I feel, for the Western world with liberties and with your constitution. And so that's why I'm so grateful to be here. I feel like we need to defend this to our last dying breath because we've already lost Australia, we've already lost the UK, we're losing Canada and New Zealand. This is the last place where free people can live and be free and have a chance at happiness. I honestly feel that about the United States. And that's why I'm so grateful to be here.
well, the United States is better for having you in it. Let me tell you, Australia
No,
doesn't know
thank
what they've
you.
lost. So
Bless.
I'm happy you're here, and not only because you fight the same fight, also you're fun to be around, as we saw in Utah, right? So when we went to GRPC, there was GRPC goes on for 2 days, and before that is AMCON, Alternative Mass Media Conference. This year was the third year that I attended, and you sat right next to me.
Yeah.
Although I was dialed in on what happened on
I know.
stage, we didn't actually start talking until day two, right?
Mm.
I think, right? Didn't we? I think on Friday for MCon, we didn't even have any meaningful conversation. I think we started to
I
talk on Friday,
Well, I
on
think I
Saturday.
was like you. I was just, it was so much to absorb and so many inspirational people to learn from, like the Mike from San Diego Gun Owners Radio, just listening to him speak. And then, of course, Mike Smith, the lawyer, too. I just learned so much in that small amount of time. And this is the other thing, the Australian shooting organizations do not put on things like this. They barely tolerate influencers. And the ones that they can't pay off, they want to squash, which I'm going through right now. So the organizations here, they are just so well run with
Hmm.
people who are in it for the right reasons and so professional. And I feel like every day they get up and say the Second Amendment to themselves, and that's why they get up and do what they do. That was the impression I got from a lot of people and the speakers. A lot of people back home in Australia do not even realize we have God given rights, let alone the organizations. This is not part of the discussion. They don't want to talk about the fact that we were born with these rights, including the right to life, which includes the right to defend our life with firearms. They are so pathetic. We are having a debate about castle law or castle doctrine back home in Australia at the moment. Even the shooting organizations have been lobbying to keep firearms off of the table for that discussion. So
That's
even
insane.
then, it is insane. So yes, let's include pepper spray, but don't in any circumstance let them use a gun because we don't want to be part of that. Well, who are you really serving? The people or your organizations that benefit from having the state government right? We have to be members of your organization to keep our gun. It's
What
all a monopoly now. That's why I call it an oligarchy.
what I find mind-boggling about that is that when the government imposes stricter laws and reduces rights or privileges or rights, whatever it is, that were previously commonplace, especially something that has a large industry behind it. Why wouldn't the industry then lobby against it? Why are the gun manufacturers, the shops, the gun organizations, why are they not lobbying against it? What's keeping them from doing that?
Well, there's a big military industrial complex in Australia. Some of the big gun manufacturers are more concerned about keeping their government contracts and fighting for the civilians of the country they're making these things in. And there's also the fact that these organizations benefit from the laws. They benefit from having mandatory registration, mandatory membership of their organizations, mandatory attendance. You have to shoot your
Ah,
pistol 6 times a year, four for every additional pistol you own. It's turned into a complete racket, and there are no men with principles or women who want to lead the fight on the principle of individual rights because they've got their little turf, they've got their monopoly, they're set. Meanwhile, my generation, the next generation, I'm nearly 40 now, but they want the freedoms that our fathers and mothers had. But we're not trusted to have those freedoms anymore because of an incident that happened in Tassie in 1996 that we were barely alive for, and we're still being punished for the sins of yesterday and for the fact that our parents didn't stand up at that time. Yes, there were protests, but you gave away our freedoms and you've left it to us to try and fight for. But you've done a deal with the government to benefit your organization or your industry. And so the people are just standing here going, we have nothing, we have no one to help us. God save us.
So your cause is a noble cause. We all have the same cause over here, and in America they constantly try to do the same thing. But thankfully, our lobbying organizations and our interest groups have bigger balls, I guess. So tell me how exactly. So how do I phrase this question? So after you ran for Senate and you did not get elected, that's when you started your online activism, I guess, right? Is that when you started your presence online, your YouTube channel, your reporting, your holding people accountable? Is that when that occurred?
Yeah, so
Tell us
in
about how that. Yeah,
2022,
tell us how
yeah.
the progression of that happened.
Well, it's funny. The name Lady Liberty Australia, it was just before I announced my candidacy to run. And I was sitting at my computer, I was about to do a live interview, and my last name is Fantinel. And the media thought it was funny to say Kate Fantinel. She sounds just as addictive and loony as fentanyl. And I've said, yes, I'm just as addictive. They try to make a joke, but they just use that against me. Anything they can use to make a mockery of me, they will. So I just, Lady Liberty Australia, I love New York City. I love the Statue of Liberty. I so vividly remember coming to America for the first time and seeing the Statue of Liberty, and I was just so overwhelmed with tears. This beautiful statue of everything it means to be American sitting there in New York. And so I just quickly changed my name on my Twitter to Lady Liberty Australia, and I was part of the Libertarian Party, so liberty and freedom for all. So that's when I started really getting into the social media side of activism, because I worked as a lobbyist for 5 years prior to that, and I worked for Senator Linehelm. I was doing like the backroom lobbying, the meetings with politicians. I've been doing that for most of my career. But then in the age of digital media, you kind of have to have that social media presence. So that's when I really started using that platform to connect with people. And I didn't start my own podcast, I think, for another year, until maybe a year and a half. I didn't start anything because I was just so devastated from losing. Really destroyed my professional career in Australia. I could not get a job in Perth unless I deleted my social media account and unless I stopped criticizing the government was part of all these contracts that I had coming my way. So I made that hard choice not to sell my principles and not to shut down everything. I had to go work on a makeup counter. That's my other passion, is makeup. So went from high-flying job, Senate candidate, back into the trenches, I called it. But it was quite developing for me as a person as well. And I got to work with young women and take them shooting because they were so interested in firearms and a little bit scared. But to have that conversation and show them in a safe environment, because in Australia it's very male dominated. Going into a gun shop or going into a gun range, it can be quite intimidating, especially for younger women who didn't grow up in the country like I did with my dad shooting, who might be scared of firearms. So I just use that opportunity, even though I'm down on my luck slaving away, to introduce this beautiful sport and passion. And women are bloody great shots because they concentrate, they listen, they're disciplined. So I love taking my girls to the range. So I've been posting everything I've done on so long on the social media, and you have to take the good with the bad. I've been getting a little bit of lately, so it's not
One
good
thing,
for your mental health sometimes.
one thing I really appreciate about female shooters is that I think shooting sports is one of the very, very few disciplines where men and women can compete with one another
Mm,
directly. And I think
mm,
that's pretty awesome. There's a lot of women out there that will, outperform me any day of the week.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I was going to ask you something.
That's one of the things I loved pointing out during my election campaign is inclusive and, gender neutral for everyone to try. It's like shooting is that, and they didn't like that. They don't like when you use their words against them.
So now that you're over here, you continue your channel though, right? You continue reporting
Yes.
on stuff that goes on with gun laws, gun regulations, or just in general bad laws and corruption in the Australian government, specifically your state in Western Australia.
Yes, so I have been prosecuting a case against these diabolical gun laws since they came out in 2022. That's what kicked off my campaign. The first thing the government did was ban long range precision rifles, or sniper rifles as they call them.
Because
And
those
that
were the
actually,
ones that were used in the shooting, correct?
well, no,
No, of
no,
course
not
not.
even,
No, I knew
not
the answer to
even.
that. I
But the
know.
sad thing about that was a lot of the army veterans or military veterans shoot long range precision rifle because that's what they did in the military. So the very first people disarmed by the Western Australian government in 2022 were returned military men. And so I had a great relationship with one of the groups when I went down there, and they were devastated because this is what they do to share their stories, their wartime stories. This is good for their mental health.
Hmm.
And then the government's come in and said, you can't be trusted with these firearms, even though they defended our country overseas. So to me, that was just such an injustice. And then it's been injustice after injustice after injustice. The limits on the number of firearms an individual can own. If you're a hunter, you can only own up to 5, and you have to prove why you need each firearm. Competitive shooter, only up to 10. And again, proving each reason, genuine reason. They have made it so expensive. They have disarmed so many people. And for what? There is not a high gun crime in Western Australia at all. So why is the government making a problem when there isn't any? And the incidents that have occurred with firearm were known perpetrators who were reported to police. An incident occurred where a mad, crazy man shot half his family. He was reported to the police because he was a firearms owner. The police did nothing until there was blood on the floor. And I'm just looking at this back home in WA
Yeah.
thinking, my poor people, because it's the next generation of shooters who will not have
Sounds
the same
familiar.
freedom and culture. Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds familiar. It's almost like it's a remake of something. Sounds like
Mm.
it's made by design. But what do I know?
Well, the hard thing about that is we have been propagandized in Australia to think America is scary and we don't want their gun culture, and we don't, firearms ownership is a privilege. It should never be a right. So since 96, we've had all of this taught to us on the media every day. And people just do not realize that this is a very dangerous society to create when the state has the monopoly on firearms and we cannot even defend ourselves with lethal or non-lethal means, and we don't
Yeah.
have free speech. This is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's a similar situation in Germany. Germany has never had gun rights like that. Not like America, obviously, but not like Australia even. And when I talk to people at home, I constantly have to remind myself that we are not actually having the same conversation. In Germany,
Mm,
people look at it as a privilege. Over here, it's a right. It's not just a right; it's a human right, just the same as life, just the same as religion, as freedom of speech. It's on the same level as all of those. And people in Germany don't have a conversation with that background, right? So it's an incredibly difficult conversation to have with people at home. They just don't understand it the way I understand it. And there was a time when I didn't understand it back then the way I understand it now. So it's a really difficult conversation, and some people will never see it that way, and
Mm.
therefore, it's almost it's almost impossible to have a conversation with a lot of people on that level. Some people, they come around. I had a very interesting conversation yesterday. I was at the Christmas party of County Supervisor Joel Anderson. Um, so over here we have, the state is split up into counties. Every county has a board of supervisors, just like a city council does have city council members. And
Mm.
Joel Anderson is a supporter of the local gun community here, especially San Diego County gun owners, of which I'm a member, a board member. And I ran into a guy there who, back in the 70s, when the Olympics were in Munich, he said that was his first Olympics. And I was like, what do you mean? Well, he was a track and field coach. He's in his 70s now, and he's never in his entire life had a gun conversation, turns out. And he was incredibly curious, and he asked a lot of really good questions, and I appreciated that curiosity. But that is a very rare conversation to have, with somebody who knows nothing. Well, actually, somebody who knows nothing is better than somebody who knows what the media tells them they should be knowing.
Mm. Mm.
But that was a really interesting conversation, and he asked a lot of interesting questions. And, I think he's not going to become a gun owner now at however old he is, in his 70s. But while I was talking to this guy, I realized how incredibly rare it is to have a conversation like that with somebody who's so open-minded, who has not had any exposure previously. And like I said, that's probably better than somebody who has had exposure that only comes from the media.
Mm.
But yeah, it sounds like in Australia and in Germany, the mindset is somewhat similar, huh?
Well, it's challenging because a lot of people are reliant on the government for their job. I
Yeah, and
think
we
it's
know the government
approaching.
never lies.
Yeah, well, it's approaching something like 40% are employed directly by the government, and then another 20% is from contracts to the government. So if you've got 60% of your population reliant on the state for their job, and this is also the problem because the shooting organizations take government grants or funding for rangers or for their organizations, they are not going to come out and bite the hand that feeds them. So
So
they're
are you
all there taking the buck, and then we're the ones who get screwed because you've sold your right to challenge them on a gun law, for example, the gun limits. You're not going to say anything because they might cut off your funding. And because everyone's relying on the state now, no one
That's
wants to
interesting
challenge
then.
the status quo.
So if you have 40% of people employed by the government and 20% relying on government contracts, does that mean 40% of the working population has to subsidize the entire rest? Because if you get paid by the government, right, that's tax money.
Yeah.
That's created by the other 40% that don't work for the government.
Well, then the rest are on some form of welfare. We
How
have
is
one
that
of the biggest
sustainable? How are you
welfare.
doing that?
This is why I've said Australia is on track to be the next Argentina. I don't know how long it'll be, but we
Hmm,
are on our way to being Argentina, which is
interesting.
terrifying to me.
Yeah, and Australia doesn't have any oil, does it?
Yes, we've got minerals. We've got the second biggest uranium mine in the world. We've got iron ore. We've got gold. We are a mineral-rich nation, but China owns most of our mines, so
Of
it all
course.
gets shipped there.
Interesting. Well, that's a different conversation. We're not in
Yeah,
the
so
economic forum
we're
here.
digressing.
Man, that's also interesting. So, where do you see your path going in America now?
Well, I'm so excited because I've been nominated for a Gundy's Award as a micro influencer. A bit of a surprise, but I'm going to SHOT Show in Vegas in January and hopefully going to the Gundy's. I've got to get in the top 5 to get a free ticket and a +1, which I think Matthias is eyeing
I
off.
was
So
going to say, do you
please
have a date
vote
yet?
for me. Please vote for me so I can at least go to this show and show you guys how Aussies like to party.
All right. I voted for you twice. You get one vote a day. If you watch the extra video, you get another vote. So I voted for you twice, and I'll log in every day to vote for you. You
Thank
certainly
you.
have
You
my vote.
gotta
There
you
there
gotta
are
get me on the air with Mike. He'll give me a push, won't he?
Yeah, I will talk to Mike about that. I'm sure you can get your spot on Gun Owners Radio. In fact, he's already said he wants you on, but I'll see if I can get him to have you on before the voting closes.
Yes.
But yeah, so I voted for you. I'll vote for you every day. There's a lot of categories there, and there's a lot of people nominated that I know. For example, Gun Owners Radio is nominated. So if you are watching, make sure you vote for Gun Owners Radio. I know John Petrolino is nominated. Masad Ayub is nominated. Charlie Cook is nominated. I apologize if there's anybody that I'm forgetting that I know personally. Unfortunately, some of those folks are nominated in the same category, so I have a conflict of interest when it comes to voting for my friends there. But anyways, anybody listening to this and who's interested, vote on the Gundies, vote for Kate, vote for Gun Owners Radio, and we'll see how it goes.
I'm excited.
Also, you're doing both of us a favor. You're voting for Kate so she wins. And if she gets into the top 5, then I have a date to go to the Gundies with. So you're doing me a favor too.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. Also, I am trying to get some people together for a dinner one of those days. I looked at the schedule of events. It seems like every night there is some sort of an after party. But one of those days, I'm trying to get some influencers together. If I've already reached out on Instagram to a few people. Some people I know, some people I haven't met yet. So there's we both now have friends in the gun community, and I've already invited people who are going to be future friends of mine, I hope, and trying to just make some connections there. The Gundies is definitely a fun event. The SHOT Show itself is more for, unlike GRPC, for example. GRPC is a great event for activists, for attorneys to update us on lawsuits, on legal issues, influencers come and that sort of stuff. I feel like SHOT Show is more for the manufacturers, for gear, for outdoor stuff. That's not everybody's space, but I want to go there. First of all, I've never been to SHOT Show, but I want to go for the networking. I think I'm going to meet a lot of really interesting folks. And if everything works out, I'll probably be covering SHOT Show on behalf of News 2A. That's the goal anyway. So the other big event would be the annual meeting, the NRA meeting. Not sure if I can make it to that, but I will try.
It's in Houston, in my neck of the woods.
I know, but I got to pick and choose because it's always a budget question. My channel isn't that big. I don't have sponsors. I don't have, I don't want to start a GoFundMe for that sort of stuff. But, maybe one day I'll have the reach and I'll have a sponsor that can help me out with travel expenses, stuff like that. But I don't really do it for the money. I'm just interested in stories like yours. I want to tell stories and give people in the immigrant community the awareness that gun ownership in America is normal, right? You can be open about your gun ownership. You don't have to go home and do that behind closed doors and be private about it. You can be as open as you want, even in a state like California, right? California is not known for being a gun-friendly state. We have pretty strict laws here. And if it were up to the media, they would make you think that everybody in California hates guns, but we're actually the most armed country in the union. State in the union. That's in part, of course, we have the most people here, but it's by far not a gun-poor state. We have a lot of guns here. And in fact, most people in California are in San Diego, in LA, Sacramento, San Francisco. The rest of the state is pretty empty. It's pretty rural, and we all know that rural communities tend to have more firearms. Even San Diego County, everybody's along the coast. San Diego, La Jolla, Carlsbad, those are Chula Vista. Those are the big cities. But if you go past the 805 eastwards to El Cajon, Lakeside, Santee, it gets kind of rural out there sometimes, And the same is true for Texas. You have a couple of big cities, Houston, Dallas, What else is there? What else is in Texas?
San Antonio.
San Antonio, that's right, of
Yeah.
course. But the rest of the state is pretty empty.
Mm.
So
Yes.
that's where all the guns are, in the empty spaces.
I'm glad you said you can be proud to be a shooter, because after
Absolutely.
1996 in Australia, it was shameful to be a shooter or hunter. You were an evil person and highly suspect if you said you owned a firearm. That is how they changed culture as well, and we
Yeah.
didn't defend it. So it went underground in very quiet conversations, and people wouldn't even put a sticker on their car saying, 2A all the way or anything like that, because they were scared they would be followed and their homes broken into, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
because they've disgraced our entire proud traditions of shooting and hunting in Australia, to the point where they make you feel ashamed. And that's how I get treated in the media as well. You should be ashamed to even be talking about guns. We have a domestic violence crisis, and you want people to be armed. Well, yes, I do want the women to be armed to defend ourselves. And I can say that I've been in that situation. But they just turn around and say gun nut. I even said I want all Australians to have the opportunity to learn safe firearms handling, because in the event they come across a firearm, how do you know to check that it's not loaded? How do you know that it's safe? If you've never seen one before, you are in an unsafe environment because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that story was twisted to Kate Fantinel wants all the school kids to learn how to shoot. Well, yes, I do, for
Well,
their
yeah.
own information and safety. So they just take the tip of the iceberg, blow that up to make you look insane and radical. And I've been called far right and fentanyl and all of this stuff. But I'm just trying to have the rational conversation. Like, I'm happy for you to disagree. If you don't want to own a firearm, you never want to shoot, that's fine. But a lot of people with the loudest opinions have never seen a firearm before in their life. And you and I both know, when you take someone to the range and you show them and you teach them, no one walks away from a range without a big smile on their face. And that's something that I do as part of my mental health and stress relief, is go and do that, because that's what my dad taught me to do. And that's my connection with the sport. So don't come and tell me, like, you can go be scared over there. That's fine. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but don't come and try and change my culture and traditions because you're scared, because you've drank the fear porn, because that's your problem. Don't make it mine.
These people are drinking the Kool-Aid. Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, that, the awareness, the safety, if somebody comes across a gun. That's how I talk to children, right? We teach our children not to stick the finger in the outlet. We teach our children to stay out of the cabinet with the chemicals in it. We teach our children how to cross the street. We teach our children all those things. Why wouldn't we teach our children about the firearms, right? I have guns in the house, so the kids need to know what's up if they ever find a gun. And the thing is, in America, and why I'm such a fan of really early childhood exposure to firearms, because guns are normal in America. There are 400 million guns in America. Almost half of American households have firearms, and not everybody advertises that. If your kids go to a house, to a friend's house, I don't know if they have guns there. What if there's a gun around that's unsecured? If my kids find the gun, they have to know what to do, how to react properly to that, if they're not strong enough to disarm the gun safely, remove the magazine, check the chamber, that sort of stuff, then at least they need to know what the appropriate action is. And we teach our children about all the other things, how to walk with knives, not to run with scissors, but the firearm thing gets left behind sometimes. And I'm a very strong proponent of, even if you are a gun hater, even if you want to ban guns, even if you don't want any guns ever in your own house, you still need to teach your kids about gun safety, because what if they're at a friend's house where you don't have any control and there is a gun there? They need to know what to do. It's just common sense. Even if you don't want to be a shooter, you don't have to be a shooter, but the gun safety is very important for kids and adults alike. If you have no exposure as a kid and you have to learn it as a grown up, you have to start somewhere, and safety is always the first. Every class I teach, the first hour minimum is always on safety. And quite often, that then gets people interested in wanting to learn more about firearms. So that's a good side effect. So now I lost my train of thought before I went into my rant about safety.
Well, I was just going to say, so my father taught me safe firearms handling and how to shoot, and my older sister and my younger brother, they both are not interested in the sport and haven't taken it up as an adult, but I chose to make it my passion, make it my career before it ruined my career. I've dedicated everything to this because it's also about protecting the tradition of hunting. And this is something else that the Australian government is trying to trample all over. They have recently banned bow hunting, so you can no longer hunt with a bow even on your own private property. This is in South Australia, and they're talking about doing that across the border in Victoria as well. So taking away that one of the oldest traditions of mankind is to learn how to hunt, and you take that away from people. I don't know about you, but in a cost of living crisis, something that I live off when I go back home is my dad's freezer full of goat, kangaroo, venison, duck.
I've had kangaroo. Kangaroo is good.
Kangaroo it's really lean protein. It's
Kangaroo
really
is good. The
for
tail
you.
is the best part, I think. Kangaroo is really good.
Yes. Where did you have that?
In Germany, believe it or not, some
wow.
exotic barbecue. Yeah, I've had gator, I've had kangaroo, but you know what? Hands down, the best meat I have ever had anywhere is ostrich. Ostrich is phenomenal. It's red meat, just like steak, but I mean, you have ostrich farms, right? Or is it mostly emu?
Emus.
Emu,
But we
yeah,
don't really eat them. They're a bit tough.
They are so tough. In fact, they beat the military in an all-out battle.
I know, the Emu War.
The Emu War.
That it is.
Your military is they should be ashamed of themselves. I'm sure they've gotten better since then. But yeah, ostrich is phenomenal. If anybody gets a chance to eat ostrich, I don't know where you can get it. Probably have to go to some specialty butcher and order it. But man, that's good meat.
I had pigeon in Egypt. Apparently, that's a delicacy, pigeon.
I've had that. I've had pigeon. I forgot about that. Pigeon wasn't bad, actually.
No, it tastes like quail almost, like salty quail.
I'm not sure it's the same pigeon that flies around the city square and poops on the statues. That's probably not the one.
Hope not.
But man, we should have talked about food earlier. We didn't talk about beaches. We didn't talk about drinking. We didn't talk about any of those fun stuff. We just talked about the serious stuff.
Well, we can talk about beers if you want.
I'm sure we'll get an opportunity in Las Vegas to talk about the fun stuff.
And no Fosters. We do not drink Fosters.
Yeah, no,
we export that.
Make sure you bring your camera. I'll bring my camera. I'll cover SHOT Show. I'll definitely create a lot of content over there. And let's do some fun stuff. I don't know if we get an opportunity to shoot. I don't think I'm going to range day. Are you going to the range day? Is that a thing?
I'm not sure, but I hope so, because I went to the Gun Owners of America Goals conference in Knoxville, Tennessee this year, and they had a media range day the day before the 2-day conference. Took us out to this beautiful range out of Knoxville, got to shoot 50 cal and belt-fed machine guns, all this stuff that's illegal back home, even lever actions with suppressors. Suppressors are illegal in Australia, so any firearm with a suppressor I was having a go at, and just amazing, and nobody got hurt. It was such a fun day. So
people usually don't get hurt on the range. That is actually extremely rare. I've seen some people who've got bitten by their gun here or there, or got a hot brass down their shirt or something like that. That's usually the worst. There's not a lot of things that happen on the range. I'm a range safety officer at my club. I don't even know where the form is to fill out an incident report. I've never had to use it. Nothing ever happens.
Well, that's the other misconception, that it's a dangerous sport. It's I think it is the safest sport in the world, because it has to be.
Are incredibly safe places in America, especially. I think, for one, You just have to be careful because it's a liability. Everybody has insurance. There's always a trauma kit. Everybody, all the range safety officers have some sort of training. And if you don't have enough RSOs, the range just can't open and operate that day. But also, we are so paranoid of the negative coverage, right? If anything were to happen, the media would jump on that immediately and rip us up. And so we're really vigilant. We're, just shooting sport is extremely safe because, well, we're responsible people, but also we know that the media would jump on that and tear us to shreds and tarnish our reputation. And, that's just the nature of it.
Yes.
So aside from the Gundies, do you have anything at SHOT Show that you want to see, you want to cover? You have any favorites? Did you write down your agenda, your to-do list?
Not yet. I need to do that. I do know, so my neighbor around this area is Stephen Williford. I've had him on my show. He was the hero of the Sutherland Spring shooting here in Texas.
Is that the barefoot shooter? Is
the
that
barefoot shooter.
The barefoot defender or whatever they call him?
The barefoot defender. He's an absolute bloody legend. I met him at the Knoxville Goals event.
Yeah, I watched your interview with that guy.
So he's going to be there. Yeah, he's just so incredibly inspirational. I'm so blessed to have met someone like him. So he'll be there. So I'll definitely be catching up with him. I'm also a big fan of Brandon Herrera. I've got my Brandon Herrera sign. He's running for Congress, the county over from where I live. So I want to get involved with his campaign. He would be fantastic to be in Congress. So there's a few big players I want to meet and mingle with and just talk to everyone. Everyone has been so welcoming here. That's the other difference back in Australia.
And that is what I always say too.
Event. Yeah.
That is, yeah. I rant about how welcoming and how inclusive the gun community is all the time. If anybody asks me, that's my favorite thing to talk about. How I came from no background. I was in the army in Germany for a little bit because we had conscription. I had to go. But that's really the extent of the experience I had in Germany before I came to America, although I did shoot bazookas and throw hand grenades and machine guns and all that fun stuff, but no civilian ownership, right? And then I accidentally pretty much got into the gun community through Gun Owners Radio, a raffle that I found on Instagram. I won tickets to Gun Prom, and that's how I met people. And immediately people were welcoming me. They liked my story. They said, let's stay in touch. And I did stay in touch with people, and now I know people from I don't know how many different states. I know people that have argued and won Supreme Court cases. I know people that have changed the way we train with firearms. I know people that are influencers. And the gun community is so inclusive, and it's also pretty small. Right, the gun community as a whole there's a lot of people are in the gun community, but the people that shape it and the people in the leadership positions those are very few people. And once you know one person, they are so happy to introduce you to somebody else, and it's really easy to get into that kind of community. And that's why I invited a lot of people to dinner at SHOT Show. Probably, I think we're going to go on Wednesday. So if your neighbor wants to come, bring your neighbor. If you happen to get in touch with Brandon, bring him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everybody will be so excited to see everybody else. And if I can meet new people, that's great. But I also like to connect people with each other. And I think that's great to go to some of those events too.
Yeah, so, it's been really, really warm and welcoming, particularly compared to the culture back home where it's very cliquey and, turf wars and I've got to keep my monopoly and who are you and who's this woman trying to cause trouble. It's like, you mean fighting for the next generation that you're not caring about? Like, it's very very toxic environment, the culture of the hunting and shooting community in the leadership level. But then I do have hope because the next generation of blokes, there are some absolute bloody legends who have really had my back and who are still fighting and defending me. And they're the ones I get up for every day. I've heard from a young 21-year-old back in Western Australia. He's just started his own night thermal scope company. He's trying to come over to SHOT Show with that. So I'm helping him. And he said it was because of me and my show and my advocacy, which made him change his view of the world.
Nice.
And so he's been a big supporter. So that's who I have to remember at the end of the day, is my people that I'm fighting for back home, and also turn my attention to fighting to defend the Second Amendment here, because without it, America will fall.
Congratulations. I love to hear stories like that. If that guy can make it to SHOT Show, bring him to the dinner.
Yeah, I'll ask him, Bodie.
That's
I'm going to
great.
send him
So
a message.
it's good to know when your influence, you are an influencer, you're a micro influencer.
Yeah.
But
That's because
you
I've
know,
been
the
bloody
influence that you
censored
have,
and kicked off platforms back home.
but the influence that you have is real. You do have an influence, right? And stories like that prove it. So good job. Well done.
Thank you.
You know, if one day you want to go back to Australia and fight for Australian gun rights again, you know, you do it. But in the meantime, I think we're better off here having you on our side in America, because our gun rights are not as safe as you would think. Or Second Amendment rights, I should say. I need to get away from calling it gun rights. I should call it more Second Amendment rights. So yeah, to have an ally on our side like yourself is always helpful, because there are people out there that want to turn it into Western Australia.
Well, I'll only go back if I've got a militia of American lads to help me liberate the country. Joking, joking.
I know, let's
Viva
not
la
get banned, right?
revolution.
All right. Anything else you want anybody to know? You have any last words, a message? Not last words. You know what I mean.
The last rites.
Closing remarks, I should say, not last words. How do people find you if they want to get in touch and learn more?
Yeah, so my channel is Shooting the Breeze with Lady Liberty. That's on YouTube. I'm Lady Liberty Australia on X and Instagram. I do still technically have Facebook, but they've kicked me out because of breaching their community stand, like posting about guns on social media, especially in Australia. I don't know if you saw that bloke from the UK who posted a picture of him with that type of shit would happen back home. So this is
that is the
being
most
a micro.
ridiculous.
I know, but that's also something I have to think of going back to Australia, is will my door get kicked in for a Facebook post? That's the world that we're living in now, particularly when it comes to firearms, which is why I'm so proud to be nominated as a micro influencer, because the fact I've even got a platform after the crap I've had to put up with back home, I'm just happy to be nominated.
On Australian Instagram, you'd probably be banned.
Well, definitely Facebook. I've had massive issues with them. That's for sure.
That British guy, that was an outrage. I thought about if I should go into that. Maybe I'll talk about it, but it's just so mind-boggling that is even a charge. He engaged in illegal activity in a foreign country,
where it's legal,
not under UK jurisdiction, and then when he comes back to the UK, they say he committed a crime apparently, and he needs to get arrested for that. That's ridiculous.
I think it was the photo that they had an issue with.
Yeah, but I mean, I keep saying, I wrote this article about
terrifying.
Erosion of freedom of speech in the UK. If you want to read it on News 2A,
Yes.
It's titled. Let me not get it wrong. News2a.com, and it's titled "Erosion of Free Speech from Thought Leader to Thought Police," something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I think that's the title. Deals with exactly that. The UK is going completely ballistic on freedom of speech. It's ridiculous.
Well, I expect it will get to a point where even posting a picture of you with a gun in the UK or even Australia is
in that case, I'd be
cause
screwed.
for the cops to come knocking.
Yeah, and Germany doesn't go there yet, I guess. But you know what? I've been here in 16 years. I've been in America. I've been back to Germany 3 times. I've been back to Europe, but to Germany 3 times. And the longer I stay, the less frequently I go. I went in
Mm.
September 21. That was 4 years ago. Was the last time I went. Um, Not sure if I'm going to go next year. If I want to go to all these events, I really got to pick and choose where I travel to because it's a budget problem, I guess.
Mm.
But so let's close it out then right here. I think there's much more material that we can talk about in a different episode. Maybe we want to get into the nitty gritty a little bit more of specific cases where we can draw some parallels to stuff that's happening in America because God knows there's always an attack on the Second Amendment here. They come up with new stuff every day.
Mm.
And I will see you in Las Vegas. I will probably talk to you on the phone before then, but I will see you in Las Vegas. I'm looking forward to SHOT Show. Whether I get my media pass or not, I will definitely go and
We'll get you in.
make some connections and see some cool gear and meet some interesting people. And I really, really look forward to that. It'll be my first SHOT Show, and there will definitely be an episode or two about my adventures in Las Vegas at SHOT Show.
Can't wait. And thanks for having me on. And thanks again for this podcast and this platform. It's so important talking to the immigrants. We aren't second-class citizens. We are proud Americans. Even if we talk funny, we embrace your values and liberty. And from my cold, dead hands, that's what I have to say.
That's it. It was fun having you on. And we'll create some content in Las Vegas. We'll do more.
Can't wait. Thanks,
Alrighty.
mate.
You bet. And with that, we'll close it out. Tune in again in about 2 weeks. I plan to drop an episode every 2 weeks. Surprise guest, because I don't know who it is yet either. So tune in again in 2 weeks. I'll see you then.